All right. Welcome back to the Business Roundtable Podcast. I am your host, David Carr of Steward Your Business, bringing people together to accomplish great things. We have another new guest this week. I'm super excited to have Jim Bramlett with us. Welcome, Jim, to the podcast.
David, thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be part of this today.
Absolutely. Jim, I'm excited because you have a wealth of experience. We're going to get into it. And I've learned the value of having such advisors like yourself coming in your 40 plus year entrepreneurial journey with logistics and really helping folks. And so I'm going to learn some things here on the podcast today. I hope everybody is listening in to Jim on the podcast here. Jim, before we get into kind of the nuts and bolts of some of these things, I love having our guests share a little bit about their journey. You are a Vistage Chair. For those of you that don't know Vistage, definitely check them out, and I'll let Jim share more about Vistage. But what got you to being a Vistage Chair now, and what you're doing? Take us back a little bit about your story as a business owner, entrepreneur, Jim.
Sure. I'll start with probably one of the main reasons I became a Vistage Chair. So, serial entrepreneur. I started my first company when I was a senior in college, and over my career, I've started 7 companies, 4 for myself, and 3 for others, bigger organizations, companies, divisions, that kind of thing. And I failed. Okay? My very first business was a failure. My second was a failure. And I started learning the hard lessons along the way. And that's one of the reasons why I wrote my book. But when the first 2 companies I started, were pretty small. One was, was just me. Another, I had a partner, pretty small. And what I did, I started the companies because of me. I didn't have any consideration for, well, what's needed in the market? Is there a need? No, I said, no, I'm just going to go do this because I think it's a good idea.
Yeah.
And they failed. Okay. And then in the middle of the .com hysteria, I started a company. I got venture funding, and this was my first real company, I like to say. I had a board of directors. I was the visionary. And I'd never been a CEO at this level where I've got over 40 families, that I'm now feeling responsibility for, leading the charge. And again, visionary, never been a leader like that. And I made a lot of mistakes because I did not have anyone else really helping to guide me. And so what ends up happening, fast forward to 3 years ago, I had started my company that I'm still a shareholder in. I no longer am active. I started this company 8 years ago, and working, grinding, and my wife had retired years ago, and she put a lot of pressure on me. Hey, remember those things we're going to go do in our golden years? Well, I'm in startup mode, and anybody who's in there, they know the grind, the hours, commitments you got to make.
Yep.
Well, she kept after me. So finally I relented and I said, okay. And I found somebody to come over and take over the CEO role, made the investment in the company, and I retired. And I retired for a whopping 3 months because I flunked. I decided there's no purpose in pickleball, golf, and tennis. And fortunately, Vistage called. Well, I had never heard of Vistage. And they told me what they were about. And I immediately reflected back to 99 when I started this company and had 40 families and being the visionary, not being a real CEO. And when they told me what they're about, helping business leaders succeed, I go, that will give me purpose. And if I can help any leader avoid some of the issues and challenges, problems that I had, that will give me great purpose. And they told me it'd be hard. And I go, well, starting companies is hard. This will be difficult. But hey, I'm a hard worker. I put my nose to the grindstone. And so, yeah, 3 years ago, I started my group, and it's the best thing I've ever done, David. I'm a business nerd.
Mm,
Love learning how businesses work, their
yep.
challenges, how they just make money. What do they do to buy customers? Because they're all different.
Yep.
And so, and I joke about this. I said, I get to be behind the curtain watching all of this, but I don't wake up at 3 a.m. in a cold sweat going, oh my God, I've got this huge challenge. I can't make payroll, whatever it is.
Right.
I empathize with my CEO members, but I'm not in the pilot seat. I'm maybe first officer somewhere,
Yep.
helping him navigate.
Well, you're doing such important work, and the work, and correct me, Vistage is not just an online thing. This is an in-person group that you're meeting with, right, Jim?
Absolutely. I'm in Kansas City, and all my members are in the area, and we ask them to meet. We ask them to take 1 day per month to work on your business. Get out of that day-to-day in and come on, let's talk strategy. Let's work on it. Let's work on your development, and let's gather together and spend the whole day. So yeah, it's all local people.
So, and there's for those of you who want to connect with Jim and you're in the Kansas City area, we're going to make sure we're going to get your links so you guys can definitely reach out to him in our show notes. I work with other Vistage chairs and others in there, but we're super excited to have you, Jim, because I want to hear, some of the challenges that you're hearing. I mean, we're hearing about different technologies, of course, that's always coming up. But what do you see right now as businesses? Like, I think hearing just you share this, Jim, and having your 40 years of experience, I know we've had a conversation beforehand and I've learned to lean into people and know that I'll go further, and I don't have to have all the answers. I don't have all the answers. I don't have all the experiences. And so what are you seeing, Jim, when you're coming, folks come to Vistage, come to you and say, like, where are they feeling stuck in their business, or where they're feeling like, how do you, even maybe they're not even diagnosing the right problem, Jim. I'm sure probably they're saying, well, this is my problem. You're like, I don't really think that's your problem. You're not even seeing the problem.
I think all too often I see that the leader maybe doesn't have the confidence and trust in his team to take up the work that's got to be done. And I've come to appreciate the amount of trust that has to be between a leader and especially his direct team, that C level. And the other thing, that I see a lot is most leaders get their position because of their subject matter expertise, their skill set, what they know, but they've never been formally trained on how to become a coach. And I'm a big fan of leaders being a coach, because you can't listen. You cannot force an employee to do their best. You cannot force them to improve. You can't force them to be motivated. You have to inspire those around you, influence those around you, and it's a skill set that can be learned, but you got to be willing to do that. And when you can become a coach and inspire and get people to just do what the right thing to do is, magic can happen. It will alleviate this big burden you have on your shoulders when you know that your people know exactly what to do, how to do it, and perform. And that's so that having the right people in the seat and having a coaching mentality, I think, are two of the biggest things that inhibit leaders from really succeeding and living that balanced work life that they strive for.
Right. Well, I would imagine, Jim, the people that finally do come to Vistage and they're in a place where they can be coachable, and then, like you said, you're helping develop that skill. If they don't already have it, they've gotten and you can get pretty far in your technical skills, but there's a certain point where you kind of tap out. It's like you hit a ceiling, and it's like, hey, you can't do it all. And I've seen this for some companies where it's like they have to rely on their people, but they haven't learned how, like to your point, Jim, coach them, integrate them, and they just expect somehow magically, well, I'll just hire this person, or they'll just come in and they'll just figure it out. And I don't see that usually work.
It's exactly right. It's exactly right. First thing that that's required, in my opinion, to be part of a peer group, whether it's Vistage or another. You got to be vulnerable. The very best leaders are lifelong learners, and they're curious, and they admit they don't know it all. And when you can get there, you're going to get a lot of help. Shoot, if you're vulnerable to your own team, they're there to help you. It's not a sign of weakness. Everybody wants to help everybody. And so, I get my members to say, I need you to come to the table and tell us what's really going on. Where are you really struggling? And where do you want just a little bit of help? It's not a sign of weakness at all. And when they do that, it's very refreshing for them. They get these great ideas from their peers, and they're able to take great action. And David, you know this. It's pretty darn lonely at the top.
It is.
Okay? And yeah, you say, yeah, I got my team, but guess what? That team has their own agenda as well. So when you've got trusted and like-minded peers, and that you can just call at any time and vent. You had a bad day at work. It's not all going away. And you can vent. That's pretty powerful, because when I was, several times in my history, I needed to vent. Well, guess what? My wife didn't want to hear about it.
Yeah, that's for sure. Amen.
Yeah. Well, who do you go to? You don't always want to vent to your team, because some of that venting might be about them. And so having others that you can, and again, it could be a mentor, it can be a coach, it can be a peer group, but I encourage everybody who's in a leadership position to have somebody. And I joke about this, but it's true. The very best golfers in the world have coaches.
Yeah.
And guess what? That coach isn't a better golfer than the PGA player, but mentally they're helping them get their mindset and everything aligned to where they can perform at their peak. And so as an executive, I encourage any leader to have somebody in their corner who can help them.
You made a really good point, Jim, because many coaches sometimes think that they're not, like you said, they're maybe not the best at that thing, but the mindset, they're bringing their unique skill set. You're understanding, Jim, and you're helping these folks, and you're creating a space and a community. Really, it's not just that. I know you do one-on-one with them as well, but as a group. And I think that's so powerful, whatever level you're in. I mean, I help more on the next level down, those group managers, department heads, and those other groups too. But doing it's very complementary to what you're doing, Jim. That's why we have you on the podcast. You're helping those executive leaders, but then they need to go back and help implement this in their companies. What does that look like? And so wherever that is, and I found the difference, Jim, to your point, the former company I was working with for years, she was very coachable and wanted that. And I was that way underneath her, and she was in Vistage, but there was other people that weren't. And if you don't have that, it's really a struggle for the company to be healthy. Yeah. If people are not in that place of, like you said, transparency, willing to be coached, right?
Exactly. And the other thing I emphasize with my members, when we gather together once a month, this is a safe space for you. And there aren't too many safe spaces left in the world,
I know, right?
Maybe church or, they're just not in it. But this is a safe space for leaders to come vent, to share your concerns, your issues, your challenges, even your opportunities, and let others weigh in. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned, Jim, I want to highlight, you've written a book called The Unconventional Thinking of Dominant Companies. And I think I like the title, What's Unconventional Thinking? Because there's obviously conventional thinking and unconventional, but I'd love you to share a little bit about your unique approach, Jim, and the way you look at things. Like, how do we become a dominant culture, especially in a company today in the world that we're living with? We've got different motivators, different generations, just things are changing. So from your perspective, how do we do that?
That's a great point. Look, unconventional. I just had a speaker at one of my Vistage groups who said, don't let others write your script. You need to write your script. So if you come in as a business leader, CEO, president, owner, I don't care. Don't assume, oh yeah, I've got the script here. I know what every CEO is supposed to do. Got to write your own script. And when I talk to salespeople, I get a big kick out of how do you even get a communication? It's the old cold call, dear sir, madam. No, a lot of times we're all so darn busy. You've got to stand out. Well, how do you stand out? You got to do something unconventional at times to stand out, to get a conversation. And I think the same is true, for leadership. If you are simply following a script that you've gotten from somebody else and you're not genuine, it's going to come through, and people are going to realize, I don't know where he's getting this stuff, but it's got to be very genuine, in my opinion. And getting that, and this is why a lot of times, David, in our meetings, we're talking best practices a lot of times, on a variety of subjects. We talk about, and I think you mentioned it a minute ago, hiring is one of the most important jobs a leader has. Okay, well, when you're hiring, is this a candidate who's going to fit into your culture, and B, are they coachable?
Yes.
And I don't think all people are coachable. I think there are people who want the most, and then there are the people who want to be the best. Those who want to be the best are coachable. Those who simply just want the most, a lot of times I find they think they've got it all figured out on their own, and away they go.
Yes.
So I think that's
that's important. Jim, I would imagine. The conversations I'm sure you probably have, right, in Vistage, of like, do I have a coachable person, or is this person in my organization? Are they the right person? Are they in the right seat? You have that conversation with the business owner.
Yep, absolutely, all the time. And I refer to my leaders as head coaches, and your job is to develop those under you. All right. So you're not going to be there forever. Do you have a succession plan? And have you developed, or are you developing those under to where they can step up? Not everybody wants to step up, but those who do, you owe it to them to help develop them so that they can lead. They can be more important leaders, bigger leaders, maybe take your job when that day comes. So again, being that coach and providing professional development, whether you do it internally or hire resources externally, you're going to get more allegiance that way. You're saying, hey, you're important to me. You're important to this organization. And therefore, I'm going to invest in your development. And of course, as a coach, you say, what do you believe you need more development on? And get them to agree, and then follow through. I just think, in today's world, I was talking to somebody the other day about, hey, when it gets tough out there, one of the first things to go is marketing. We trim that marketing budget. Also, personal development is one of the first things, they take out of the budget, which is a shame.
It is. I agree. Because do you see the business owners want to, this is my experience, Jim. I'm like, well, let's just buy some software or some other program or something, but it comes down, that doesn't really get the return, right, that they're wanting, if they would stay with the professional development investment.
Right. And now, David, you got every kind of AI tool out there that you can imagine.
Right.
I've got a member in one of my groups today who's developed an AI tool to enable salespeople to practice their pitch and their conversations. Okay, cool. That's great. I endorse that 100%. I've not run into anybody who says, oh yeah, I've got an AI tool that's going to help develop managers into directors, and directors into VPs, and VPs into, the C. Because I think it takes a human touch. It really, I don't think there is an AI tool that can do that.
Well, at the end of the day, it's human to human relationship. Yes, I think we can read. You've written a book. I have the these are good resources, but they're not. They are supplemental to what you're saying, Jim. Of what we're doing, literally talking and connecting, and having emotional intelligence, awareness. Right.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
you're putting members in a room in a good way, right? You're creating a space, but a vulnerability and opening up, and they wouldn't get otherwise. That
Right.
experience, right, Tim?
Yeah. It's interesting when I talk to my leaders in my one-on-ones, I don't think there's been a meeting yet where they haven't had at least one aha that they've learned something. Yeah, it could be from our speaker. We bring in speakers and do workshops, and that's about professional development. If they don't learn there, they're going to learn in the afternoon when we really act as more of an advisory board, sharing best practices, giving good advice to each other to solve issues. But it just takes one aha, to go, today's meeting was worth it, because, and I tell them this, money's not your most valuable commodity. It's your time.
Yes.
You can go to a financial planner and they'll tell you how much money you have, how much it's going to be worth in 10 years and 20 years, and how you can retire at this age. You can't go to anybody and say, gee, how much time do I have left? Do I have 10 years left? Do I have 15? No, you don't know. So you have to treat the time you have very specially. And I think it's the most important commodity. So when I get leaders to come to this meeting, I know, because at times they're most precious commodity, we've got to make things happen. And we do.
Well, I think that's a great place, Jim, too, because I would imagine when you're coming in there, and I've learned to put myself in whatever you want to call it, the crucible, whatever the place, but a place that's going to be a little uncomfortable, because I think, Jim, in a good way, right? You're going to be asking them some questions. Are they focusing on the most important things? I don't know, as a leader, I know I've gotten this go into minutia. I start parachuting into things that I really should not be doing, but I feel comfortable there. I know that, and I want to go there, but it's not moving. It's not making a real difference in my company, to be honest.
Yeah, one of the things that we do, and it makes members a little bit uncomfortable, is we'll go down and try to uncover their self-limiting belief. Okay. Oh, you're not able to do this. Well, let's dig into that. Let's dig a little deep. Why? What is your belief? And what you'll do is you'll uncover a self-limiting belief. Well, I can't grow to 50 million because, no, is that true? Are there facts behind that, or is that a self-limiting belief you have, and what's driving that? So, in a lot of cases, we'll dive deep. We'll get into their emotional state and what's preventing them from being the person they really can be. We talk about, and I've learned this in the last 5 years, that every decision we make is based on our values and our beliefs. Okay. Hey, we're going to stop at that stop sign because I believe if I don't, I can get a ticket or I can get into an accident. I just believe that. So that's how I behave. I'm going to stop at all those. Okay. So, a lot of those values and beliefs are formed at an early age.
Yes.
Okay. When you're young and growing up and you're seeing all these other things in your environment, your parents are probably teaching you a lot of your values, or your school or your church are teaching you your values. And then you start coming to believe certain things. Well, guess what? Some of those beliefs may not be true and they limit you.
Yes.
Well, I can't ever be a CEO. Wait a minute. Why? What's causing you to say that? That's a self-limiting belief. So we get down deep into how people think, how they behave, and how they influence others that way.
Well, that's super important. As you said that to me, what came to mind, Jim, is I would say correlation to that is, what are your inhibitions and prohibitions? And I think we have a lot more. There are prohibitions, but I think there's more inhibitions to what you're saying, and they're self-imposed. And to your point, Jim, they might not even realize you're saying how much that is there. But I can assure you, my experience working with the leaders and teams, especially when I'm at the next level, the team down further from the high up, Jim, that you're working with, I'll ask them questions about certain things, and they're like, well, this is just the way, or this is what it is. And it's coming from the top, and it's kind of unwritten. It's like you said, it's like oozing out And they're wondering, why isn't their team doing this? Well, they're not believing it, so their team certainly isn't. It's like if you are hiring a salesperson, and if you're not the best salesperson selling yourself, they're definitely not gonna sell you if you don't understand this, right?
Absolutely. And I tell my leaders, and I tell mid managers this as well. You don't realize this, but you're always on stage. Your people are watching you, and they are definitely listening to you. And I didn't realize that. In my mid career, I would make these snide remarks kind of as a joke, and the next thing I know, it's spread throughout the organization. I was telling somebody the other day. I said, okay, let's say you come into work every day, and every day you say good morning to the receptionist. And today, for whatever reason, you got distracted, you're on your phone, and you don't say hello, good morning to the receptionist. What does the receptionist think? Oh my God, what did I do wrong? And now she's telling, others in her orbit, oh my God, the boss must be pissed at me because he didn't say good morning. And you're always on stage, and it's a tough place to be as a leader, but if you know that,
yep,
they're watching what you do it, how you act, how you behave, everything about you, they're watching, and then everything you say, they are listening, and you got to know that.
Yeah, no, that's so important, Jim. I mean, what you're explaining to me is, the word culture, right? What is that culture that you're creating on one way or the other? Like you said, you created it by the way you said some things, and you didn't realize I'm actually creating it, but that's not the culture I actually really want at the end of the day, right?
Correct.
And you're helping the business leaders get clearer on their values and how do they want this to show up in the organization, right?
Absolutely. We've had some phenomenal speakers on culture, and I've had a mind shift on culture. I back when I was in day-to-day operations, I thought culture just kind of happened, and maybe you swayed or influenced it a little bit, but now I am 100% culture is intentional, and culture is simply a collection of beliefs and values that translate into behaviors. And it's up to the leader. And I've learned this. It's the leader who says, here are the acceptable and endorsed behaviors I want in this organization. This is how we're going to treat each other. This is how we're going to treat customers. This is how we're going to treat vendors. And it's not just a word or a phrase. They're actual long paragraphs in detail. So there's no question. And I have this in my Vistage group. They're called fundamentals. This is what we believe, and this is how we're going to behave as a group. And we recite one or two every time we meet, because we have to hash it in. This is how we are going to act as a group. And so I believe culture is one of the most important parts of any organization and company. It defines who you are, how you're going to act, how you're going to behave across the board, and everybody has to buy in. And I also learned, David, this. Yeah. I had a speaker said, any exception will define your culture. For example, well, this is our culture. This is how we behave, except for Ted, who's been here 25 years, or Susie, who's the owner's daughter. No, it has to be consistent, intentional throughout. Any exception throws out everything.
I hear you, Jim, and that I think business owners, to your point, I think it's very common. I found this, think, well, it'll just happen. And you're saying, like, we have to recite these every time we come back in. And I know I like to say this. I've been married 20 years now, but I like to say, I don't just tell my wife I love her once and that's it, right? It's a repeating reminder of like what it is. And I think sometimes they went, well, can we just set it and forget it? And it's just, it doesn't work that way, Jim, right? That's been my experience.
Absolutely. So the speaker came in and shared this awesome wisdom about culture. He told us he really learned it from the Four Seasons Resort. Okay. And he said, you know how big they are, how many
Oh yeah.
properties they have. And they have like 31 of these, what they call fundamentals. And it's a paragraph, how we act. And throughout the organization, on this week, we're all on fundamental 6. From housekeeping has their staff meeting, to maintenance has their staff meeting, to the front desk has their staff, and they're all on number 6. And they will ask somebody like the head of housekeeping will ask housekeeper, what do you think of number 6? Give me an example of that. And then when they get through all 31, they start back at number 1, and the whole company's on the same fundamental, the same week at the same time. And therefore, when new employees come in, they just get into the cycle, and they said, this is how we behave. And I was telling somebody the other day, I hadn't really thought about it. When you go to a Four Seasons and say, excuse me, could you show me where the restroom is? They say, certainly, follow me. Because that's one of their fundamentals. You don't just tell them, you escort them. That's a behavior.
And absolutely.
I tell my members, boy, if you can master culture and behaviors and you get everybody behaving and thinking the same way, it's going to make your life and job as a leader so much easier.
Well, I would say, Jim, I mean, that to me goes to what you're saying, unconventional thinking or being a dominant company. How can you be, if your service or product is very similar to somebody else, how do you distinguish yourself? And I think what you're saying, I'm hearing, is the culture, right? You can distinguish yourself. You can have a competitive advantage in the marketplace because you have a unified team. And their experiences, like whether you go to whatever the Four Seasons, or if I go to Chick-fil-A or whatever, I'm going to have a very similar experience there, right?
Bingo. They don't say you're welcome. They say my pleasure. That's part of their culture. And a real quick story. I've got a member who runs an organization of safety professionals. So on a job site, when you have 50 construction workers, you have to have one safety professional. And so his job is to place these safety professionals with general contractors on job sites. And he now takes his fundamental behaviors on that sales call, and with the general contractor, he hands it to him and says, let me tell you what the person I'm going to place with you, what he believes and how they're going to act and behave. And if they don't, he won't be with our company anymore. And I said, there isn't anybody you're competing with who is going to share that with a general contractor. Say, let me show you what the kind of person we're going to place with you, what they believe and act. And I said, that will get you more business because you're selling your culture to your customer.
Oh man, Jim, I know we're getting to the end of the podcast. This has been great having you here today. You're sharing some awesome wisdom. What really aligned with me is believing that leadership is really about people, and that coaching and inspiring them to, together to do that meaningful work. And you covered a lot today on the podcast, but I always like to give our guests an opportunity, if they, the last nugget or takeaway, that they're listening and they're not in a group, if they're not in a space right now, Jim, and they're hearing this, a business leader, owner, what would you say to them? That they're hearing your voice, they're here on the podcast today. What advice would you give to them?
Yeah, my advice is this. There's an old African proverb that goes like this: if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And I don't care if it's a mentor, a coach, a peer group, don't go it alone. It's a rocky road. There's lots of bumps and curves. And when you have somebody else in your life that you can talk to, that you trust, it's going to be easier journey than otherwise. That's my piece of advice.
Oh, I love that, Jim. I really appreciate you being here on the podcast, just dropping some knowledge and some gold with us today. Vistage is very fortunate to have you as a chair. And if you guys are in the Kansas City area, you got to get together with Jim out there. Thank you so much, Jim, for being with us on the podcast today.
David, thank you for what you do, man. You sharing your wisdom with leaders is such an important thing to do. So thank you for doing that. Thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Awesome. Thanks everybody for coming along the podcast with us. Of course, we love it when you like and subscribe, whether you're watching this on YouTube or LinkedIn. Leave your comments. We'll make sure that Jim gets them. Of course, we want your feedback always. And share this if you found value in this and appreciated the time that we had today. Until next time, be well. Thanks again for being a part of the Business Roundtable podcast, everybody.